to shut it all out and just go on and just try to live your life. Take care of your family in peace. But here's the problem. While some folks are frustrated and tuned out and staying home on election day,
Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2018 WISCAR Leadership and followed by the National Anthem of Liberia.
I come from a place where mothers go to battle each day with a baby strapped across their backs. Another still clinging from their breasts, child care at its finest. A place of street businessmen who don't need a white collar to make deals. They sign contracts with handshakes. Shirtless, sometimes shoeless, they will show you how to make money. And you will find anything in these streets. From hubcaps to toilet seats, and it's been said, if you leave home naked, find yourself caught in the gridlock traffic of Lagos roads, they will have you dressed. Boardroom sharp briefcase in hand between the mainland and the island. And I come from a place of jaw-dropping mansions and face me, I face you rooms. Where a child hawks goods in the blazing sun next to an air-conditioned Mercedes-Benz, there are dichotomies here. With abject poverty chewing at the seams that bind us, but we are the same people who built a city on water, who bent fire and metal to give you art, built empires before the world's first breath. Check your textbooks. Better yet, check your encyclopedias, read between the lines, you will find us there. You will find us everywhere, every continent, every country, every climate speaking Portuguese, French, Italian, and they call us uncivilized. We can show you how to perfectly pair your caviar and wine and still get down, fingers deep in a plate of pounded jam. And I come from a place where the world's best storytellers first spoke, who taught you that you must set forth at dawn. Be no longer at ease with that thing around your neck before things fall apart. So when you ask me where I come from, there are things that I want to tell you that are louder than my bright green passport. Things that are heavier than the failed explosive cradled in Nutalab's underpants. Things that are more colorful than a well-crafted 419 email. And you will never understand who I am until you know exactly where it is that I come from.
So today's conference, the theme of today's conference is Enriching Lives, Telling Our Own Stories. And we'll be telling our stories, we'll be hearing wonderful stories from our role models, drawn from Africa and all over our country. And we'll be hearing it in the spoken word. This was some poetry by Nigerian poet Titi Lokwe Shonuga. We'll also be hearing it from performance art as well, courtesy of Ifeoma Fafunwa. I'd like to thank all of you for being here, and for being here on time. And I'll start the conference right away. You know, Nigeria has been likened to a plane flying with one engine instead of two. To boost our economy, our competitiveness, our country needs to enable its second engine, its women, to fully participate at all levels of governance and of our national life, so that as a country we can fly high and we can fly fast. It is therefore my honor and privilege to introduce a representative of our executive branch to open this year's conference. Dr. Okechukwu Enelama is Nigeria's Minister of Industry, Trade, and Investment. He oversees the policy making and implementation relating to industrialization of the economy, development of small and medium-scale enterprises, promotion of exports and foreign direct investment, and the expansion of trade. Prior to taking office in 2015, he was the founder and CEO of Africa Capital Alliance, a leading private equity firm in West Africa. His 5 funds raised over $1 billion for investment in companies based in Nigeria and across West Africa. He has it's a significant achievement. He has 27 years of private sector experience spanning finance, consulting, auditing, and private equity, working in the US, South Africa, and Nigeria. He is a medical doctor, so his own doctor is a real doctor. And he's an alumnus of University of Nigeria, Nsukka. He's an Harvard MBA, where he was a Baker Scholar and a Loeb Fellow. He's a chartered financial analyst. And along with Amina Oyagbola, our founder, he's a fellow of the Africa Leadership Initiative, West Africa, and the Aspen Global Leadership Network. He's also chair of Apostles in the Marketplace, an NGO focused on personal transformation to facilitate societal transformation and the emergence of a new Africa. He is therefore ideally suited to open this year's WISCAR Leadership and Mentoring Conference. Dr. Okechukwu Enelama, Nigeria's Minister of Trade, Industry, Trade, and Investment.
Thank you, my sister Habiba. When I greeted your parents, I told them that I'm your sibling or your brother from another mother. Because I said, you know, I have so many friends and Sister Leif. Thank you. I have this opportunity to welcome you all. Congratulate the board and management of WISCAR Village of knowing her, you know, at the time when she was birthing this vision, and her consistency, her tenacity, her staying power has been simply exemplary. Congratulations. First female president in Africa, former president of Liberia, a Nobel Prize laureate, first female winner of the Moiba told us at the beginning, an element for industry, trade and investment, and business more generally to thrive in Nigeria. The President Muhammadu Buhari administration is committed to progressively making Nigeria one of the easiest places to do business. That's our vision. And we would like Nigeria to be one of the most attractive investment destinations in the world. I'm sure you've heard of the word BHAV, big, hairy, audacious goals. We ought to dream of a better Nigeria. Right from my first engagement with the private sector and the media when I joined the government, I stated that our vision and objective as a ministry, that's the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, is to be known as a Ministry of Enabling Environment for Industry, Trade and Investment. In fact, I recall attending the Senate hearings during the confirmation period, and I mentioned the theme enabling environment quite a few times. And the Senate president had to ask me, what exactly do you mean by enabling environment? And I had to begin to explain that it just meant making it easier for our people. Because we have such a wonderful people that if we made it easier for them, I don't think we need to do a lot more for us to reach our potential. As a member of the core team responsible for delivering on this government's objective or this administration's objective, I would like to just, since we're telling stories today, talk about 3 of the initiatives we're implementing, which, I find very interesting because these initiatives are being executed and led by some of our most successful women in the country. The first one is repositioning government's investment promotion agency, the Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission, to a 21st century fit-for-purpose organization. The Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission, under the leadership of Mrs. Yewande Sadiku, is being transformed from a passive establishment to a proactive investment facilitation organization. NIPC now works actively with local and foreign investors to attract investments and resolve peculiar business issues as they arise. NIPC has reduced the uncertainties and even ignorance around incentives for investments in Nigeria by publishing the first of its kind compendium of all the investment incentives in Nigeria in conjunction with the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. There is now an online investment guide which documents opportunities that are available by states. NIPC is now working to automate the Pioneer Status Incentive application and the use of the One-Stop Investment Center. So there's really a lot going on at the Investment Promotion Agency, Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission, and it's led by Yewande, one of our more successful women. The second example, thank you. The second example I'll go to is the efforts being made by government to systematically remove the binding constraints on doing business in Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari inaugurated the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC. That council is a collaboration between the federal government, state governments. It's playing a very important role in ensuring that the successes of our women will not just be something that happens with just a few, but by mentoring and leading and helping others, that will become the story of our women more generally. So again, I want to applaud women
leaders. The details of her life as a successful woman trailblazer while in office and after a successful career at the United Nations and the private sector are detailed in her book titled "This Child Will Be Great: Memoir of a Remarkable Life by Africa's First Woman President," published by HarperCollins in 2009. I recommend this stirring tome as a must-read for women in WISCAR women's streams, career, and role modeling programs. To paraphrase the relevant points to the theme of this conference in her book, the world would be peaceful and just with women's access and participation in decision-making processes. She contributed her quota by appointing women to high-level positions in Liberia and the United Nations, where she supported the establishment of programs for the empowerment of women and gender equality. Her work with other world leaders on the post-2015 development agenda has made sacrosanct gender equality and women's rights in the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. I'm therefore assured that the moving account about her life
for creating and sustaining positive impacts in the lives of thousands of women through the Win with WISCAR mentoring program. It is without doubt that the organization has for 10 successful years lived up to its founding dreams of giving African women the wings to fly and a thriving environment to enable them to develop professionally and be empowered. The theme of this year's conference, Enriching Lives by Telling Our Own Stories, is very apt and a pointer to the fact that there is an urgent need for us to tell our stories and share our experiences to inspire others to greatness. Stories are told to motivate, inspire, teach, and safeguard others against repeating past mistakes and errors. An untold story is an unlearned lesson. There is a need for us to tell our stories to enrich the lives of other people and motivate them to start the journey to change. Oprah Winfrey told the story of how she was sexually abused at a young age, and that story inspired several women across the world who have faced such to come out to seek help and pursue justice. Michelle Obama, in a recent book on Becoming, came out to tell the story of her battles with infertility, and it has since given millions of women the hope and inspiration needed to take medical options. According to the saying that great things happen when women support women, women need to support other women by inspiring them with the stories of the challenges they have overcome on their journey to self-development and purpose fulfillment, and also by going a step further in engaging in the mentoring of other women to set them on the path of achieving professional development. Let me use this opportunity to call on all professional women and women with successful careers to do more in the area of mentoring the younger and upcoming ladies to achieve even greater success in their chosen careers. Women have a crucial role to play in nation building, and it is an undeniable fact that there's still a wide gap between the potentials of women and the percentage of these potentials that have been utilized for the development of our nation. Our government understands this challenge, and as a result, we have been working relentlessly at introducing and implementing policies aimed at addressing issues pertaining to women, particularly in the areas of empowerment, domestic violence, sexual abuses, to mention but a few. As a government, we will continue to partner with women empowerment-based organizations like WISCAR to ensure opportunities are created for women and the girl child to achieve their potentials, because we know that
to stop the violence against women by men, leading by example. And that's what we really need in leadership, both men and women realizing that they have to look after both the men and the women in our country. Please let me invite Chief Olokpade to deliver his goodwill remarks.
Your Excellency, President Johnson Sirleaf, former President of Liberia, Your Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State, Honorable Minister of Industries, Mrs. Amina Oyagbola, members of the Board of WISCAR, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to be in the midst of women who have made remarkable progress in the fields of commerce, politics, business and professions. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the first and the only Oba in Lagos is here being represented by his lieutenants. May we rise up and please welcome them into the audience. Kindly sit down, please. I am honored to be in the midst of women who have made remarkable progress in the fields of commerce, politics, business, and professions. I am pleased that the trail that began with the formation of WISCAR in February 2008, over a decade ago, has continued to make appreciable record in equipping several professional women with the relevant skills and competencies to effectively manage their careers, assume leadership positions, and to contribute meaningfully to nation building. For these, kudos must go to our sister and daughter, the founder and chairperson, Amina Oyagbola, and her team, including the advisory board members, the faculty that have made these empowerment schemes possible. I can only say there is always room at the top, and you should not rest on your ass, as these issues surrounding marginalization of women and equitable distribution of the nation's wealth and leadership positions are far from being actualized. These are issues very close to my very dear heart. For those of you who share in this struggle, as they say, should count on me in your side to push the envelope and chart the territories in line with WISCAR's objectives, especially in your monitoring program, which I understand to help unleash their potentials, navigate career pathways, foster ambitions, and nurture dreams. If pursued with maximum vigor and fidelity, very soon Nigeria will become like Rwanda, South Africa, Uganda, Zambia, Mauritania, which have achieved so much in terms of gender mainstreaming in governance and business leadership. I am surprised that the number of women in Nigeria's National Assembly has been shrinking only to 7 women, and in the Senate, out of 109 members, and only 15 out of 360 in the House of Representatives. Is that the 30th affirmative action Nigeria acceded to in Beijing in 1995, sorry? I ask that simple question. Anyway, now that 2019 is approaching, things may change with what WISPAR and other vigorous campaign and motivation. Please keep organizing and mobilizing our sisters and daughters not to pander to patrimonial sentiments, as it is empirically clear and majority of leadership experts agree that women are just as capable of being good political and business leaders as men. Women are perceived as indistinguishable from their male peers when it comes to leadership qualities, such as intelligence and capacity for innovation. On other qualities, honesty, fairness, compassion, and willingness to compromise, most fair-minded people actually judge women as superior to men. There could be resistance, but you should not remain unwavering in your quest to create your world. For when they do, they will always make it too small. You women who have made it must strive to be role models, to empower other women to achieve their potential and become meaningful contributors to economic development. I have long held an opinion that women are mothers, aunts, sisters, nieces, cousins, daughters and granddaughters, are grateful and the way they are made, marvelously, wonderfully, gracefully made by God, and they do not covet anything whatsoever that their male counterparts have or possesses naturally or artificially. Like all human beings, women desire to live full and fulfilled life. In whatever walk of life they find themselves, they want to be given the opportunity to perform and excel. That, I think, is why many of them have done very well, like their male counterparts in business and professions. There is no denying that, of course. I know traditionally in Africa, and especially in Nigeria, women have always been very prosperous, powerful, and successful. I am talking about Efunshetan Aniwura Iyalode of Ibadan. In the 1860s, she was the first woman to set up a flourishing agrarian company that employed no fewer than 2,000 men and women. Worried by the spread of war and combat, she introduced infantry military training into the midst of her workers. Before her, there was Queen Amina, who was the first woman to become the Saranuwa, that's the queen, in a male-dominated society. She expanded the territory of the Hausa people to the north of Africa, and if we are, to the north of Africa, and if we are not amnestic, the exploit and role of Aba Women Riot in 1929. These were not sophisticated women with strings of degrees and industry experience, as you are, modern today women. Savvy in information, technology, and strategic networking of all kinds. We should not wait for people to make our world for us and take it or leave it. There are times when silence is not golden. At some other times, silence could just be plain, yellow, or pale. I urge you to keep the flag flying. And with
Chief Olopade, thank you very much. Chief Femi Adesanya, and our third patron, Ambassador Nosifo January Bardell, who is here to give a goodwill message on behalf of the WISCAR patrons.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Albiba. Excellency, President Sirleaf Johnson Sirleaf, distinguished guest, it is really an honor to be standing up here today and celebrating the success of WISCAR that was started as an idea 10 years ago, nearly, Amina. But before that, let me also acknowledge all the women who were here this morning, who got up, did whatever they need to do, and came here to celebrate success, achievement, and excellence. Shall we give ourselves a big hand? Can we also acknowledge the young girls who are sitting in their uniforms on our left, on my left? And welcome them as young girls who have a future that is much brighter than perhaps the future that we imagined when we were your age. And so it really pleases me to see so many young girls coming here this morning who also got up early to be here and join their senior compatriots. Ladies and gentlemen, I have such clear memories of Amina going to INSEAD in France to do a leadership course and coming back to start this amazing organization called WISCAR, whose idea is to develop women to truly become leaders and improving the quality of life in all our African nations. I think what Amina and her team have done is demonstrate what it is like to start with an idea, just a little dream, and take it to where it has become today. It took a lot of hard work, it took much focus, and it took a determination to succeed and really make it an icon in Lagos, but also in the whole of Nigeria. And although I come from South Africa, I live there, I've watched WISCAR with envy because we certainly do not have anything quite as structured in terms of mentorship development as you have. But the success of WISCAR is also about the leadership that Amina set up with her team. For me, what it has demonstrated is a leadership that can be trusted, a leadership that is ethical in its approach, a leadership that is very inclusive in the sense that WISCAR has brought a lot of other people into its fold to make the organization a success. And I think that for me demonstrates the value of a leadership that understands that you should not move alone by yourself and play. You have modeled to all of us how to start an organization, how to grow it, how to water it, how to nurture it to become the success that it currently is. And so my message, and on behalf of the other patrons, is to say well done, to say we will continue to support you and the efforts that you put into us, and really to celebrate that success, which is what is happening today. And I must confess that I like the way you as Nigerians celebrate success. My observation from the South is that you're very good at celebrating success, and it is some lessons that we all have to learn. And so we wish WISCAR and its patrons and its advisory committee, and also Amina's family, her mom and father who are sitting there, and her dear husband Bayo, who stands by her all the time, and her sisters and family and extended family. We wish you more passion, we wish you more success, we wish you more resilience, more collaboration, and more support from all of you who have come to share this seminal moment today. We wish the mentors and the mentees strength in pursuing and making this a stronger method of growing young people. And of course, all the companies and others whose contribution to today's event and to the success of WISCAR is invaluable. And finally, just to say, I'm so aware that this event is happening today, which is 2 days before the 16 days of activism against violence of women. It is a crucial that has grown in every single country in the world, according to a report that was done by UN Women, including the Nordic states, which are sometimes seen as the real kind of bastions of propriety. And so it is important that we celebrate the fact that we are here as women, and women who have survived the experience that others have done who have not been so lucky. The second issue is also this conference of WISCAR is being held a few days before we celebrate the 70th anniversary of the Declaration for Human Rights, which will be celebrated on the 10th of December. And so to bear that context in mind, as we convey and emphasize the message that the world will be a better place when more women are involved in its development and its ultimate success. And so with those words, thank you very much for inviting me, but also all the best for the day.
Thank you to all our guests for their goodwill messages. As Nosifo mentioned, we wouldn't be here today without our sponsors. I'd like to mention our principal sponsors, EcoDisco, MTN, and First Bank, but we have a whole multitude of others that we've showcased in the conference brochure. We are truly, truly, truly grateful, for this support that you've given that has enabled this conference to take place. So it's now time for the founder's remarks. A lot has been said about Amina already, so I'm just going to give you some key highlights for those of you who don't know her. She's our founder of WISCAR, Women in Successful Careers. She's also the CEO of AKMS Consulting, which is a strategy and business consulting firm, and she's a partner in Oyagbola Chambers, who are legal practitioners. She's a corporate executive and a business mentor with over 30 years experience, with a career spanning legal, consulting, banking and finance, oil and gas, and telecommunications. She's a Chevening Scholar, a Chartered Fellow of CIPD, UK, a Fellow of CIPM here in Nigeria, a Certified Ethics Officer, and she's also the Chairperson of the Institute of Directors Committee on Ethics. She's a Fellow of the Africa Leadership Initiative West Africa and the Aspen Global Leadership Network. She's an alumnus of Ahmadu Bello. You'll notice when we're introducing many of our speakers, we try to give you a view of their background and their career, because this is a mentoring program. And a mentoring program is giving young people, a roadmap, seeing what path other people took to get to where they are. So she's an alumnus of Ahmadu Bello University, Trinity College, Cambridge, Lancaster University. She's got an LLB, an LLM, and an MBA, and also an alumnus of executive education programs from INSEAD, London Business School, Harvard, Ross Business School, Michigan, and IMD. She's happily married with Bayo Ayagbola, who is our WISCAR Advisory Board member, and they have 3 grown children working in engineering, finance, and telecoms. That's our founder, Mrs. Amina Ayagbola.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that, Habiba. What a day. This child will be great. This child will be great. And all of us will be great by the time we finish listening to what Her Excellency, Madam President, ex-President of Liberia, has to say to us today. But I'm going to keep you in further suspense, because really it's something we've been planning for a long time, looking forward to for a long time, so you're going to have to be a bit more patient with us. Your Excellency, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the immediate past President of Liberia, the Honorable Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, my dear brother and friend, Dr. Okechukwu Enelama, His Excellency, the Liberian High Commissioner to Nigeria and ECOWAS, Ambassador Al-Hassan Conte, Honorary Council, the Liberian High Commission Lagos, our mother, and somebody we admire, always beautiful, always elegant, always supportive, Chief Mrs. Oprah Benson. Permit me to stand on existing protocol. The Governor of Lagos State, forgive me, ably represented by the Commissioner for Women Affairs, His Royal Highness, the Oba of Lagos, Oba Akiolu, ably represented by his white cap chiefs here present. Other distinguished members here present, ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular delight to welcome you to the 2018 WISCAR Leadership and Mentoring Conference. WISCAR's annual conference marks the end of each year's labors, learnings, interactions, triumphs, and progress. Perhaps most importantly, each year's Leadership Mentoring Conference signifies a new beginning for our mentees of the transition of their dreams and the pinnacle of their professions and careers. Over the more than 10 years of WISCAR's programs, we have had a tremendous impact on the lives of many young women who have all gone on to make their marks on society. They have sown impactful changes, not only locally, but several have actually distinguished themselves on the international stage, and we are extremely proud of them. WISCAR has taken more than 300 women through her structured 12-month-long Win with WISCAR mentoring program. In addition, more than 5,000 women, and indeed men, have benefited from WISCAR's highly impactful and soft skills programs and conferences and events. The programs have stood the test of time and proved their value many times over. WISCAR has not rested on its oars, but has continued to build on her programs and events to innovate on ways of positively impacting and enriching the lives of her mentees and of the other beneficiaries of her programs. WISCAR has continued to hone the entire curriculum for utility and ease of delivery. Although the several seminars and programs offered by WISCAR are now well known, let me give just a brief outline of the key features of each year's offerings. A careful matching of each mentee with a mentor, selected to help the mentee begin the realization of her goals and ambitions. Attendance at a series of rich and varied careers in 4 book reviews. Role modeling, which is really what today's event is about. Role modeling with targeted opportunities to network with significant and successful women in the Meet a WISCAR series, and of course, the highlight being at the annual WISCAR conference. Several programs in partnership with Habiba Balogun Consulting, open to both men and women at building crucial soft skills to add to their professional armory. Today, I'm pleased to say that we're graduating the 9th set of mentees to join the wider WISCAR alumni and WISCAR community. To our mentees, I say congratulations for staying the course and completing one chapter of what we know will be a long and successful career, because the program is rigorous and not easy. It is a sacrifice for working women. I urge you to utilize the values and the skills that you have acquired from your program with WISCAR. I know you will be inspired by this final masterclass in your WISCAR journey, and trust you all to go boldly and fearlessly into the next phase of your lives. The WISCAR community has faith in you. We are rooting for you, and we will always be part of your support network. To the incoming mentees, Stream 10, we welcome you to what promises to be the most transformational year of your life. You are unique and well-positioned for the opportunity placed before you. Please get ready to be sharpened, to be inspired, to be guided, and to be supported. The theme we have chosen, Enriching Lives by Telling Our Own Stories. This theme fully echoes WISCAR's exemplarity model. WISCAR has always prized the voices of confirmed successful women as catalysts for the growth and progress of up-and-coming mentees. Treading in the footpaths of those who have gone before us is a certain map and navigator to any destination, because when those who have finished a journey tell us of their travails and triumphs, we know which turn to take and which ones to avoid. We must, however, also bear in mind that when those who wish to go on a journey speak of their intended paths, those who have already arrived from a similar journey can warn them of the pathways that are bedeviled with quicksand and other dangers. They can advise them of the routes that will ensure progress, success, and achievement, and that is what we want. Storytelling has earned its place as the most important tradition humankind possesses. The most important reason for this is that every story contains a lesson to instruct the audience. When we share our stories, we teach our communities how to love, how to forgive, how to be fair and just, and how to strive to be better than today. Storytelling requires no artifice. It merely requires a spirit of sharing and caring. Some of the older ones amongst us will remember that before the ubiquity of television, blockbuster both takes place. That is why the telling of our stories is so critical to all our collective futures. Our hope today on this very, very special occasion is that the stories of our distinguished speakers and panelists will join us all in a pact of meaningful progress. Telling our stories also helps us to set goals. A wise and successful woman once said, "The size of your dreams must always exceed your current capacity to achieve them." I am therefore, I don't even know the joy that I feel. I'm extremely pleased and honored to announce that the iconic and highly distinguished woman who put these words in the marble of our minds is our distinguished keynote speaker today. So please join me again in heartily welcoming Her Excellency, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the immediate past president of Liberia. No, she should sit. Sit, no, sit. No. And in her book, "This Child Will Be Great," President Johnson Sirleaf went on to state that if your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough. Should I repeat that? She said, if your dreams are not big, if your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough. We at WISCAR have dreamt big, and we have in some way actualized our audacious dream with her presence here today, the presence of a global female icon, a woman of proven integrity, a warrior, and I mean it, a warrior for peace and justice, a Mo Ibrahim Prize winner, a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, a distinguished WISCAR Award recipient. Should I go on? I could go on, but I do not want to in any way foreshadow or preempt the stories, the interesting stories we will hear from Her Excellency today. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Your Excellency, for choosing to be here with us today in spite of your very, very busy schedule. May the good Lord continue to bless you and keep you for us. It was Jean-Baptiste Alphonse Karr, the 19th century French journalist and editor of Le Figaro, who said, and forgive me because my French is not too good, "Plus Karr change, plus c'est la même chose." In English, that means the more things change, the more they stay the same. After several decades and more of female emancipation, and even though tremendous progress has been made, certain recent events suggest that women worldwide still have mountains to climb in the quest for equality. It is not only in Nigeria or Africa, but worldwide that women continue to face discrimination. In politics, in the economic spaces, through sexual harassment at work, and by physical abuse at home. These are all blights that society must continue to fight for socio-economic development and for enduring social harmony. It is no longer a cliche that women are often the best agents for peace and reconciliation. Indeed, whenever women have spoken up in defiance of tyranny, fresh windows of solution have opened. Still, women all over the world face different challenges that are not unique to one race, one country, or one place in time. Indeed, the challenges of inequity and inequality at work and at home are universal. There are, of course, nuanced differences from country to country, but the universality of socio-cultural expression finds less than subtle similarities. Recently, we have seen the naming and shaming of the #MeToo movement. That is a valid method for fighting oppression and harassment in the workplace. We must, however, remember that it is not the only method. The recent walkout of Google staff protesting office harassment and inequality is another example. So to adopt a Churchillian prose, we women must defend ourselves whatever the cost. We must fight in the workplaces, we must fight in the schools, we must fight in the homes. We shall never surrender our equality. Still, the #MeToo movement must be extolled for encouraging women to speak up more about their experiences. It must be praised for lending voice to the previously voiceless. The goal must be to continue to press for progress, and we must adopt as many approaches as there are cultures, as many paths as there are communities, and as many strategies as there are women. Let us boldly tell the world that women are ready to take their rightful place in society. Women's rights are quite simply, and has been said, women's rights are quite simply, as has been said, human rights. No more, no less. We are especially fortunate to be able to hear from Her Excellency President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf today. But we also have with us other women and men of great substance and outstanding achievements. Our speakers today, the lineup include Ambassador Nosifo John-Bardi, who you'll be hearing more from on the panel. She's a diplomat and corporate relations specialist and chair of the Nelson Mandela University Council. Ms. Hadiza Bala Usman, who is a public administrator and managing director of the Nigerian Ports Authority. Polly Alakija, artist, author, and chair, Lagos State Council of Arts and Culture. Kofo Akinkugbe, real sector entrepreneur and CEO, Secure ID Group. And of course, Aisha Ahmad, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And Mr. Tunji Ladner, leader of thought and raconteur. Comparing, as you know, of course, is Habiba Balogun Consulting, and she's a notable organizational effectiveness consultant. Finally, we will also be, we also have for you, we're presenting to you an innovative Nigerian playwright and artist, Ifoma Fafunwa, who will be presenting some very, very thought-provoking sketches during the course of today's proceedings. I want to specially appreciate, in closing, our patrons, the WISCAR patrons, my formidable fellow advisory board members, and our wonderful and continue to support us and all that we do at WISCAR. And I want to thank them for being available today. I also want to express my profound appreciation to the 2018 WISCAR Conference Planning Committee, chaired by Boma Ayomide Abi. If they can just stand up where they are, they have worked tirelessly, for this event. I would also like to thank and recognize members of the WISCAR Secretariat who ensured the smooth hosting of this milestone event. And the WISCAR Secretariat is led by none other than Fabia Ogumekon. Where is she? I'm sure she's busy running around. Thank you very much. I thank all our donors with sobriety, because honestly, it's very difficult to raise funds these days. All our donors and our sponsors for their very, very generous financial contributions and in-kind support to WISCAR this year, and indeed from inception. Without your support, we wouldn't be here. Last but not the least, I would like to thank, as I said, the staff of the WISCAR Secretariat and our volunteers. We have a large community of volunteers for all their hard work, their passion, and their dedication for advancing the WISCAR vision. I thank you all for choosing to spend today. Saturday is a tough day in Lagos. There are lots of conflicting events. I really, really appreciate all of you in the room for being here today and honoring, Madam President all the way from Liberia. I have no doubt that you will leave this gathering empowered, emboldened, inspired. Please read her book. There's so much wisdom in that book. And I quote Madam President when she said, "To girls and women everywhere, I issue a simple invitation. My sisters, my daughters, my friends, find your voice." Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Amina. She mentioned that, we started, I think our Honorable Minister kicked us off this morning listing some women in key positions of leadership, making a difference in the world. And Amina mentioned one of them, Mrs. Ifeoma Fafunwa, who is a creative director who will be putting on a performance. She's going to do that for us right now. But as I said, since this is a mentoring conference, and the biggest, from research, the biggest barrier to women's progression, you'd be surprised, is lack of sufficient female role models. It's very important that we really tell you the profiles of all the women that will be presenting and participating in this conference today. So Ifeoma Fafunwa is the founder and creative director of iOpenEye, a Nigerian production company, which utilizes performance art to drive social change. Her acclaimed show, Hear Word, Naija Women Talk True, has been showcased at Harvard for 2 years running and will be touring Lagos, Los Angeles, Hamburg, and New York this December and January. So make sure you see it. It's actually a life-changing performance. Hear Word is a collection of entertaining and riveting monologues based on truths all over the world, especially in the US and Nigeria. She's directed Vagina Monologues, Not My Affair, Naming Ceremony. She's had a one-woman show, which was nominated for the best solo performance in the Los Angeles Weekly. She was responsible for Nigeria's cultural submission at the London 2012 Olympics, and she participated in the London International Festival of Theatre in 2014. She's an alumnus of University of Massachusetts Amherst, and a visiting scholar at the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study at Harvard University. Mrs. Ifeoma Fafunwa.
All protocols observed. Good morning. Good morning. My grandmother told stories about egungun and angry, rabid dogs. Nkitas, she called them. Nkita Nabia, she would whisper, looking out the window each time my small cousins wandered out of bed. From women like my grandmother, I learned to string words together like a necklace and then place them like stepping stones and lead the imagination on a journey. I am a social impact theater maker, a storyteller, a mother, and a patriot. I use dramatized storytelling to challenge the status quo and empower. My work is inspired by truth, and my work on gender inequality, while doing it, I've come across many stories and I've had many experiences that have shaped the work I do and have changed my life. Although I studied architecture in university, my love for theater loomed over my life, and I struggled for many years to find the confidence to enter the world of performing arts. You see, in my days, it was not easy to tell your friends, your parents, or yourself that you left Nigeria to go all the way to America to study theater arts. I got a job in architecture, in an architecture office. And one day in a coffee shop, I saw an announcement that a Nigerian professor of theater was coming to town to direct a Nigerian play at a nearby university. Immediately, I sent the theater department a letter addressed to the director explaining that I was an aspiring actor from Nigeria and that I would love nothing more than to be in his play. After a brief meeting with the director, I was cast in the show. As I was one of the few who owned a car, the stage manager asked if I would please give the director a ride to his hotel every day after rehearsals on my way home. The first time I dropped him off, our Nigerian director lingered a long time in the car. The second time, he cracked jokes, and though I wasn't sure, it appeared to me that he was trying to toast me. By the third drop-off, he placed his hand on mine and requested a peck. You can imagine the discomfort. I mean, I was 21, 22, and this man was probably 50 years old. He was the director in the play. And more critically, there was nothing physically, mentally, or spiritually attractive to me about this man. When I got home, I decided to call him to set some parameters. After a few uncomfortable silences, I managed the courage to tell our professor that I was uncomfortable with his advances. To my surprise, without hesitation, he told me that he did not understand what I was saying and that I should please proceed to clarify. So, I explained that his advances could be taken as harassment, and that since he represented the university, which surely had a policy against sexual harassment, I could report, but that being a fellow Nigerian, I did not want to have to do that. I could hear laughter on the other end of the phone line. Harassment? Is this what you are calling harassment? Whoa, Jackie software. That is nothing. Women have driven me out of their houses with cutlass. Story 2. Many years later, on a Wednesday morning, while my children were at school, I walked up to the old Ikoyi home of a high society woman and was greeted by a well-dressed butler wielding a tray of champagne. He walked me into a room filled with 12 other women, all of whom, like me, had been invited to lunch. The food was plentiful, and the conversation an artful complaint which skated from the difficulties of finding good domestic help to whether it was Roberto or Araba that had the best cakes, to how tragic it was not to find good smoked salmon in Lagos. I was the newcomer, and my voice, intimidated by the atmosphere, wished only to run and I have not yet found a church home. None, I replied. That is not a good idea, the other women chimed in. In fact, it is too risky. You can lose your husband. You will lose your home. Are you not thinking of your children? One day, you may find one small sachet of wrapped banana leaf in between your mattresses. You don't know Lagos women, no. You need a praying pastor on retainer. Some years later, I met a lovely woman. Let's call her Bisi. Bisi had been married for 9 years, but her relationship with her husband had started off on the wrong foot, for it had taken 5 years for her to get pregnant. This delay in conceiving had placed a strain on her marriage, and at the same time, it had allowed the formation of a strong and dysfunctional bond between her husband and his mother. In fact, when Bisi came to visit me, her husband had not spoken to her in 17 months, and at his mother's suggestion, he no longer ate her food. Instead, weekly, his mother sent him a pot of stew, a container of leaf soup, and a bucket of fried meat, which he kept locked away in his separate bedroom cupboard. Yet, several nights a week, he would leave his room, go down the corridor to Bisi's room, and crawl into her bed to satisfy himself. Then he would return to his room, lock the door, and go to sleep. Within these sad and interesting stories lies the truth of pervasive patriarchy. As women, we navigate our lives within it. Like fish in an ocean, we often cannot see it or define it. I mean, how does a fish distinguish water if it has not experienced air? In my work, I have learned that women, including myself, live with insecurities, limitations, and fears. We are oppressed by unspoken rules and cultural norms which we ourselves set. We have learned not to trust one another, and it's difficult for us to collaborate, which is why this event is so incredible. We have learned to create fictional lives on the internet and place importance on the acquisition of material goods because it may be the one thing that we can control. We confine ourselves to small compartments labeled acceptable, successful, and dangerous. And we sort ourselves by who has a husband, who has children, and who we think is a woman of virtue. Yet, just beyond all these stories are stories of victory, triumph, and success. Right there lay an overwhelming potential for effective leadership and nation building. It has begun. The numbers were shared with you, and they are appalling. But the journey has begun, and it is inevitable. I have come to a place where I believe that change in Nigeria is only possible with the direct and meaningful engagement of its women, and we are on our way. In my personal quest for confidence and my journey towards contribution, I started a small theater company utilizing storytelling to drive awareness and empower women. Armed with stories I heard and collected and experienced, I put together a play titled Hear Word, starring 10 incredible actresses. The show not only addressed gender inequality, it boldly asked audiences, especially women, to examine how their actions sustain patriarchy and oppress other women. Sitting together in those dark theaters for 90 minutes, listening, reflecting, feeling, becoming witnesses to the compelling stories of other women proved transformational. Within Nigeria's culture of silence, we had created a safe space and an opportunity for change. This collection of stories titled Hear Word has since toured some of Nigeria's poorest neighborhoods, marketplaces, bus stops, and university campuses, as you can see up there. It's been seen by Nigeria's political and religious elite. It has had its US debut at Harvard, as Habiba said, went to Amsterdam, showcased at the United Nations, American Repertory Theater, and this December, as she said, and I'm gonna repeat it because I gotta plug my stuff, okay? It opens at the renowned theater in New York, and we have 5 shows before that at the Muson Center in December, so please come. Next year, Hear Word, courtesy of the Canadian High Commission, will be translated into Pidgin. I hope this work continues to inspire. I dream of a day when every Nigerian feels safe, equally valued, and part of the Nigerian family. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share with you a snippet of the play. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share with you a snippet of the play Hear Word, performed by one of Nigeria's best stage artists, Omono. Thank you.
That is how they called family meeting. They said, let us settle the matter. I said, okay. Me, from time I don't like stress. Harmony, as my pastor used to say. They were clearing their throats. frowning their faces as if they were thinking how they will start the matter. Then one of them asked, nothing. Nobody talked. Then they said, what again? What is what again? Is that not enough? Again, clearing their throat. He said you grabbed his manhood. They said it's very heavy. As if they were saying, you poisoned him. You drank his blood. You killed his children. I told them, yes, I did it. He was beating me. His father thought, pointing his finger at me, he said, what did you do? What did you do wrong? I started thinking of what I had done. Every time he beat me, the way his father used to beat his mother. One time, I said we should pay school fees on time. He slapped me, said I should know what to do with his money. Another time again, I did not hear what he said. I said he should say it again. He slapped me, blow me, kick me. Say, are you hearing what I am saying now? Do I look like a woman to be opening my mouth anyhow? I covered my mouth. He started complaining about my eyes, that they are looking at him somehow. I started looking at the ground. He said, what are you doing in the room? Don't you have work to do? Hey! He beat me in front of all the neighbors. They're asking me what me I have done. I have held my tongue. I have closed my eyes. Now, I open my eyes. I told them, he beat me. Hey! They sighed as if they were one person. As if they were thinking, what will we do with this woman? Our wife, a man must sometimes beat his wife to help her understand her place. She is weak, you see. That thing you did to grab his manhood, squeeze it and threaten him, die! That is not natural. It is not womanly. I told them that it is not manly to beat somebody you are stronger than. They said, it is our culture. He will not do it if you did not need it. I told them that it is a very bad culture. Talk to your son instead of asking me questions. Are you waiting for him to kill me? They say, don't you know he can die from the thing you did? Do you want to kill him? There is something my pastor used to say. every time we don't understand what he is saying. What we have here is a failure to communicate. I have to tell these people what was on my mind in a way that they will understand. I told them, yes, I heard it, and I squeezed it, and he shouted, never! And he begged me the way I used to beg him. And if that man should beat me again, I will take a knife and I will cut it. I looked at all of them so that they will understand. They looked at me. They looked at each other. They said they will talk to their son.
I don't need to encourage you to go and watch Hear Word, right? Serious subject, but we were all laughing and we were entertained while we were being educated. So please talk to your sons, ladies and gentlemen, especially the mothers. Talk to your sons. So we've got a panel, an interesting panel coming up. But before the panel, I just want to announce that Air France has gifted WISCAR with a ticket, a business class return ticket to any destination in Europe with a value of 1.2 million naira. And they bid in, and then we'll announce the winner of introduce our moderator, a very special person, Mr. Tunji Lardner. He's a globally recognized media and communications expert, managing complex communications advisory services for various countries, including Nigeria, as well as a sought-after public policy analyst with deep and broad understanding of the uses and impact of new information technologies in good governance and transiting democracies. He started his career as a journalist, writing for The Punch, Tribune, Newswatch, This Week, and writing for international, regional, and international newspapers, journals as well. He founded an NGO called WangoNet in 2000. That was the first civic technology initiative in West Africa, and provided a template and advisory services for other NGOs in West Africa. He was recently a senior communications advisor to Nigeria's executive vice president, working on Nigeria's anti-corruption communication strategy. He's on many boards. He's a Ford Foundation fellow, teaching and writing at Purdue University, Indiana. He's an alumnus of the University of Lagos, a Reuters scholar, Knight fellow with Stanford University. He served as an adjunct professor at the Center for New Media at Columbia University and a research fellow at the same university. He's an inaugural Global TED Fellow and on the advisory board of the TED Global Africa event. So ladies, we have a heavy hitter as your moderator today. Over to you, Tunji.
Thank you. I don't know, I stand here feeling my fears coming in here and facing all you big, bold, wonderful women. And my confidence as a man faltered, I must say, because coming through the door, the very first set of people I saw were the security officers, which were big women. And I was saying, okay, this is going to be a totally different experience. And then I came in here, and I had, separate sessions with my very distinguished panelists. And I suddenly realized that, okay, just behave yourself. Just behave yourself. So my strategy now is to just throw myself at the mercy of all the women here and just surrender now. I negotiate my terms of surrender now when everyone is happy, as opposed to afterwards when I'm fully captured. But it's been a really, really great honor to be here. I'm going to start by allowing our very distinguished panelists just 2 seconds of their own sense of this experience so far. This has been a very powerful experience. Just 2 seconds, by way of introduction. Your name and
Yes,
the sense of yourself.
My name is Nozipo January Badal from South Africa. By this last
young girls, and also for all of us to share experience and support ourselves. What some of us don't realize is being up here, you actually need continued mentorship. You're not there yet. So when you see all of us here, you should know that we all have our challenges, we have our insecurities, we have all the issues that you all have, and we seek to find avenues like this where we can sit with each other and share experiences and lessons on how we as ourselves could support each other and also how we can mentor you. So I'm glad to be here, and I look forward to being with WISCAR and providing any support that I can and providing any avenue for mentorship that I can in my little ways. Thank you very much for inviting me and for having
me. Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone. My name is Aisha Ahmad. I'm Deputy Governor at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Like everybody else, I'm excited to be here. I think that thinking about the role of mentors or the role model, looking at the women that, I'm sitting on the panel with, President Johnson Sirleaf, and all the other people that we talked about this morning, I think what the sense it gives me, and I think everyone should realize, is that for people to mentor you, for people to be role models, you don't have to be within your exact environment. What technology has done for us is to democratize learning, is to democratize mentorship, so to speak. And so any one of the women here or men that inspire you, feel free to follow them on whatever social media they're at or to follow their activities. It doesn't have to be a formal mentorship relationship. You don't have to formally define the relationship, and that's really what worked for me. I'm looking forward to sharing my experience as well, and more importantly, learning from these amazing women that are here today. Thank you.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. It's an absolute honor to be here today. To be surrounded by so many incredible women. I want to go back to the tea bag analogy that came up earlier. For many years, I was a very happy tea bag, and then all of a sudden, I found myself in very hot water. And it's thanks to the women around me, some of them who are here today, I was able to squeeze myself and become a very strong cup of tea, who aren't so able to. The path of an artist is not an easy one. I've always been a painter, I've always been an artist. How to now turn that into a career of excellence, of recognition, is not an easy one. But to be honest, if you're an artist, that's not what concerns you at heart. You focus on your work and you focus on creating the best work you can. Where does the recognition come from? That's the question. And how do you become recognized? And we talked about the issue of what happens to artists when they leave Nigeria and go overseas. Somehow it's easier for them to become recognized. So what's going wrong there? What is the disconnect there? I'm going to turn your question a bit upside down a little. It's a conversation I had just yesterday regarding an educational program I'm very involved with. I just go back to the basics the whole time. How do we help our girls? How do we help our ladies? And I go back to education the whole time. And where are we going wrong with those building bricks? We know a lot of our girls don't complete even their secondary education. So let's look at even our primary education. What's going wrong there? So I'm passionate about bringing arts into the classroom at the most basic level. We need to change how our young children are educated. Those building bricks are so important. So I use arts as a pathway not that I believe I can create lots of brilliant artists, but because I believe through the arts we can instill some core values, some core skills, creativity, be brave enough to speak out, like we've just heard in that performance. How do we get our young girls to understand that it's okay to come out with a different answer? You're not going to be beaten for coming out with an answer that's deemed wrong, to see things differently. For me, that's what arts and creativity is all about, and that's what I try to focus on. I don't focus too much on what, the headline act, the famous artist. It's like we need to get back to basics, and I believe that way we might be able to make a little bit of change for our girls.
As a follow-up question, you said the fortunes of young artists in Nigeria somewhat change when they leave. Are you suggesting that Nigeria itself has, just the general environment of Nigeria has perhaps a negative effects in the evolution of young female artists?
This is a conversation I have quite often with a lot of young artists. And as I said earlier, for most artists, we focus on creating good art. We're not too gender focused, so the focus is on the art. So in all honesty, I can't say that female artists are particularly prejudiced against. It's more the general atmosphere here. It's very difficult for any artist, no matter your gender, to really become successful. We have some very brilliant artists within Nigeria. We have very brilliant female artists, both within and without Nigeria, who are becoming successful. But our art market here is quite limiting and quite limited. I would like the core skills behind being an artist to be part of all young girls' education, because within that, we are giving them the tools to make a difference in their lives.
Thank you. We'll move from art to, well, how would I put it, accounting. Aisha, what was your own path to excellence? Was it planned? Did you have every single detail mapped out that 20 years ago, we know this child shall be great, and so therefore we're going to map our way to become the governor or deputy governor of Central Bank? Was there a deliberate plan? Did you set off saying, one day I'm going to be deputy governor of the Central Bank?
No.
That's the long and short answer.
Yeah, that's the short answer. I think the first thing to say is that I'm still on the path, because you're always growing and you're never at a destination. It's always a journey. For me, it's never really been about a particular position. It's usually about the role I'm in at the time and how I want to make an impact in that role. I tend to define myself beyond whatever my job title is. I see beyond what it is called and go to the root of what it is meant to do, whatever impact it is meant to make. When I worked in the banking sector and I managed private wealth relationships and investments, for me it was a bigger conversation about how I could help some of the wealthiest, who we are in terms of our background, where we are coming from, with who we want to be. And they can be two very different places, but the two align. So for me, it is about, you need to own, and I love the theme actually.
And as it is now in your own case, you're still evolving. The conclusion is open-ended. So how would you be able to reconstruct that for people who might not have the kind of confidence you had to just jump into the void of an open-ended story?
Okay, thanks. Well, it looks like I'm confident now, right? But I was not always like this. And the truth is that in everything I do, there's always a level of not being sure. So last night I was up thinking about what to say. And I told my husband, he's like, go to sleep. I'm like, I'm thinking about what to say. He's like,
you know, me too.
Yeah, exactly. So it looks like that. And perhaps all of this work we do is what makes us this way. When you know you've done the work and you're like, I'm going to come and tell my story, and it is my story, and hopefully, even if one person feels that it is useful, then we have succeeded. But in terms of a method, I think your question is about, is there a method to this madness? In terms of a method, I think one thing I can see through everything is that I've always worked very hard. I've always tried to connect with people, all sorts of people, even those people that maybe don't seem to care too much for me. If you're in a work, don't seem to care too much for me. If you're in a work environment, I like to understand what's going on around me, even those that don't agree. So that has worked. And in terms of the hard work, it's not really about working hard for the services industry. It was not as broad as it is today. But I knew that I needed more skill, more expertise. I went to do an MSc in finance, even though I had already had an MBA in finance. But I thought I needed something different. I got to do the MSc finance. I found out that there was a global certification called the Chartered Financial Analyst, which would put you more or less in a sort of, it ranks you globally. And I wanted to know how I would sort of compare with the global investment manager. So I went then and I did that one. And so it's just like I look at gaps and I fill the gaps, whether through formal education or people I need to meet, etc. And somehow all of this just works out. But most importantly, what I want to leave people with is that it needs to be okay to do the work for doing the work's sake. You don't really have to do the work because you want to get the next thing. Or usually, when you do the work that way, you do get the next thing.
So you do the work for the work's sake, and you do your best at every given time, even if you have butterflies in your stomach, like I have right now. Adiza, your own pathway to success has also been checkered to the extent to which my own memory of you was as an activist. And you before then, you worked with the Bureau for Public Enterprises. So it's been a somewhat interesting journey and a somewhat interesting story. I imagine that, Aisha, you didn't actually plan to wind up running the Nigerian Ports Authority. Or perhaps you did, we don't know. So what is your own take on this, narrative of doing the work for the work?
A person where he is and you don't realize that it's quite a long journey and the journey is ongoing. On a daily basis, I get inspiration, I get mentored, I listen in and see how I can add value to myself in what I'm doing now and what I intend to do. Broadly speaking, there was no clear trajectory that I would end up in Nigerian Ports Authority. Of course, within the, as Aisha has mentioned, wherever you are, whatever task you're given, you need to focus on that and excel. Excelling in any task given to you is what would propel you or what would allow people to recommend you and understand that this person is a person that has capacity, a person that can be relied upon, a person that will deliver on anything given to them. And that's very important. In addition, while we're female, and I like to say I'm a girl, and but what we need to do also is to focus on being capable people as opposed to defining ourselves around our gender. Yes, we're girls. I would like to be called to the table because I'm capable, not because I'm a girl. I would like to sit around that table because I am that person that was in class with you, you other male, and I beat you. I scored better A's than you. That's why I'm here, not because I'm a girl. I can do better presentations. I have the capacity to match you for everything you do. So I think it's important for young girls, and as we also improve or as we grow, to understand that what is important is not just to say, I'm a girl and I need to be called to the table. No, you need to be capable. You need to excel. And yes, you can marry all of that with being a girl, but this is a critical part of what you need to do. And in a lot of ways, as I find myself in government, I was in government, I did politics, I did civil society. What's important is to sort of, hold ourselves accountable. Right now, I'm in government, and a lot of times when I speak, people tell me that you're speaking like you're not in government. I said, no, even when you're in government, you need to hold yourselves accountable. We need to speak to ourselves and speak the truth to ourselves in holding ourselves accountable to any sort of our mandates, the tasks that are given to us. So, for example, now, with Bring Back Our Girls, I've been advocating for the rescue of the Chibok girls from 2014, and I wear my badge everywhere I go. So it's just always a joke whenever I go, for example, to the presidential villa, and they mock me, oh, Adiza, you have your badge, you're still campaigning. I was like, yeah. Just because I'm in public sector, I'm in government, doesn't mean that I don't have a passion. So we need to not allow where we are to put us in a box, refusing that narrative that defines your space, which says, for example, because you're in government, you can't advocate. Because you're advocating, you can't be in government. Because you are, for example, young, you're educated, you can't be in active politics. We need to refuse that and to say, I am who I am. I'm this person. I have the ability to be in governance. I have the ability to advocate. I have the ability to be in politics. So that dynamism gives you, I would say, the platform, the ability to spare and sit around various tables, be part of various dialogues, because I won't allow you to limit me to just the space you define for me. So it's the same thing with gender. They tend to define, for example, leadership roles, for example, authority around the male gender. I was just speaking this morning and mentioning, like, jokingly, I've been Nigerian Post Authority for 2.5 years. But still, when I go to work, I see my colleagues say, "Oh, good morning, sir." Because in their mindset, it's a man that should be in position of authority. They're unable to reconcile that, oh, it's actually female that is my boss now, and it's actually not, sir, I should say. So when they say, "Good morning, Martin," it's like, "Good morning back to you." So it sort of reminds us that they feel this female person should not be there. So these subtle reminders that you find, in your journey, you find wherever you go, that seeks to remind you that, hang on, you female necessarily should not be my boss, because in my mind, my boss is a man, so my default setting for recognizing my boss is to say, "Good morning, sir," in every opportunity. So speaking to, what you've asked, this is, I would say, a sort of my perspective of how we should strive for excellence as women and what we need to look at, as we take these bold steps of shattering the ceilings. Like, just to speak about when I was appointed, I was the first female managing director of Nigerian ports in 63 years. So no one could reconcile a woman being in first maritime industry is male dominated. Nigerian ports had never had a woman. And there's also a sense that I was young, which in my opinion is completely ridiculous. I was 40 when I was appointed, but that sense that, oh, she's young, oh, she's a girl, oh, she really can't do this. So for everything I do and everything I did in my 2.5 years in Nigerian Post is to prove to them, to show them, yes, this girl can do it and can do better than all of you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that. Sorry. My bad, sorry. Thank you very much, madam. Thanks. Let me go on to Kofo. Kofo, your own pathway is unique because you chose something in school by way of a discipline. You're a mathematician. And so what did you encounter in your own narrative that either A, encouraged you to pursue maths, or B, challenge the trope that girls don't do science, that women don't have the smarts to be scientists? We know of architects that segue into theater arts, and I'm sure there are all kinds of lateral moves professionally, but math is a pretty specific discipline. So what encouraged you to stick to maths, and how did that help you ascend to the point where you're an entrepreneur producing global world-class products?
Thank you. What drew me to mathematics? If I go back to my school days, it wasn't planned. I was actually getting F9 in maths. And it was just an obstacle, which is what life presents to you. There are obstacles. And I took a decision that I need to unravel this one way or the other. And, I guess it was that spirit to overcome and determination. And before I knew it, midway my high school, I started loving maths. And that sort of birthed a passion in me for the course of the sciences and to chart in the path of the sciences. I ended up doing additional mathematics, and I always found myself being in the very uncommon areas. Going on to university, I went with the intention of doing computer science, but did sort of a double course, maths and computer science. So my second year, I was supposed to choose which one of them I candidate. Again, I took a decision. That was an obstacle, and I had to overcome that obstacle. So I ended up, rising up and ended up winning the prize in mathematics in the university at that point in time. Now, I knew that now it wasn't all planned, but I just knew that I didn't want to lecture. and I didn't want to be a professor, but I wanted to be in the corporate world. So to my surprise, when I started going after applying for jobs, I was shocked to have too many job offers, and I was like, what will maths do in banking? But I guess they know that just being friendly with numericals is a fundamental skill that one needs in life across all boards. For me, having to also go for an MBA was a very significant paradigm shift in my life, because it was moving from being in the sciences where you have one right answer and going to an area where you have too many answers and it's relative. So that was tough. That was a tough shift for me. And so for me, for the girl child and the STEM child, I will encourage them to take that course. Because what it did for me, apart from being in banking and doing financial analysis and credit, having that mathematical background created some kind of, trained my mind to logical thinking. And it was very easy for me to take decisions, to do root cause analysis, and to think through it logically. And so by the time I started my entrepreneurial journey, and that has helped me in my entrepreneurial journey as well, especially being an entrepreneur and a leader, decision making and sound judgment is critical, you know. And especially being again in the area that I'm in, which is manufacturing and technology. You're constantly thinking of improving your process. You're constantly thinking of operational excellence. You're constantly thinking of doing better. And in my business, it's a male-dominated sector. And because of my background, I'm used to being the odd one out. So it was very easy for me to get into that business sector, doing a business that wasn't considered feminine and doing a business that everyone thought was difficult to do in this part of the world. And so with that spirit of overcoming and conquest and determination, it was not easy, but I was able to set up the first sort of the plant within Africa. And so what I find is that with that logical background, you're not limited by your vision. You're able to dream big, you know. And being in a male-dominated sector as well, it wasn't about struggling with the men. It wasn't about being tough. Because you really, for women, when you're tough, sometimes you're seen as being aggressive, you know. But that wasn't the game. The game for me was to simply be the best at what I do. And as I went on in life, when I started my entrepreneurial journey, there was a time I had to backtrack and ask myself, wait a minute, why am I working so hard? And why am I doing what I'm doing? And so when we talk about being a custodian of your own legacy, I had to rethink, what am I trying to achieve? Because I knew it wasn't about profit. I knew it wasn't about money. But I knew that there was something and there was a drive in me to make that impact. And it was very early in life, or very early in my entrepreneurial journey, I realized that I wanted to leave a legacy. I realized that I wanted to set up a business that is enduring, and not just a local business, but something that has a global prominence. And that is what Max has done on the background.
Thank you. Ambassador January, we've listened to the ladies in various capacities, how they've overcome their own personal fears and concerns in a male-dominated world. I hasten to use the P word, but since Ifeoma has given me the permission to use the patriarchy as an example, you're swimming against the tide in a pool of the patriarchy, right? And in that tidal wave, you have to perform 3 or 4 times better than the men. So it raises a very interesting question. Some people arguably say that women are better managers at relationships. Their interpersonal skills help. But overall, they have perhaps a much more comprehensive sense of how to manage things. First of all, do you agree with that on a general principle based on your own experience in the private and public sector? And the second leading question there is, do we have something to learn from what is on a continent-wide level now, what is happening in Ethiopia, where we've just had a female president, a female electoral chair, and 50% of the cabinet?
That's a tough one. But let me say that I believe that we are better at managing relationships. And the reason for that is that we are more willing or able to be vulnerable. I think we are not afraid to express our vulnerability. And I think it also has to do with the fact that we actually have no choice because we have to manage so many different things. And at some stage, you need to ask for help. Because if you don't ask for help, you're going to end up not pursuing your career, other interests that you have. So I think that inherent ability to be vulnerable is a very important ingredient to the management of relationships. And another reason I say this is because I've also witnessed it. I've witnessed how, you know, when you get into a car and you drive somewhere and you get lost. What we do in South Africa, we'll stop, if you're a woman, you'll stop at a petrol station and you'll ask the attendant to give you directions. And the attendant, normally they are very accustomed to being asked directions, so they give the directions. But we don't find it difficult to make that stop and say, I am lost. On the other hand, I have traveled with so many guys who will not stop at the petrol station to ask for help because they don't want to show that they don't know how to get to where they are going. And it's little things like that that I think make a difference. And when I was saying to Amina today that I admire the way in which WISCAR has mobilized support and help, it comes from that ability to say, I'm vulnerable, I need the help, can we do this together? With respect to Ethiopia, I think that it is a sign of progress of the future, especially for a state like Ethiopia, which is stereotyped as being very left of center, socialist, very dogmatic, etc. But in South Africa, we have also learned, because when we came in 1994, we said 33% of government has to be female. So we've had the experience of females or women getting into government, into parliament, into the legislature, into the executive. And that leadership, the person at the top, the leaders that we have had, and the way in which they've brought women, or women have brought themselves, let me say, women have brought themselves into those spaces, has had a huge impact on how women perform in those spaces. So, for example, I would say in Nelson Mandela's government, there was a lot of space for us to make a difference, to really actively participate in being, in my case, a diplomat. In Thabo Mbeki's era, there was a lot of space to be an effective civil servant and to really make a difference. But I wouldn't say it was the same in the last 10 years, where the women's movement within the political parties and in the state were eroded of that power because the person who was leading both the party and the state, in many ways, it hindered our ability to make change. Definitely going to. So if they are excellent, as the women have just said, at what they do, they should be given the opportunity to go into government and be ministers and be secretaries of state, however you want to define them, because the job is there and they're competing equally for it. But to expect that they will transform the society and make it more gender responsive, whether it's the gender responsive budgeting, etc., that's the responsibility of everybody in government, including the men. And that's the message that I would convey, to say that wherever we are, in whatever position we have, it is our responsibility and our moral obligation to treat women equally, fairly, with respect, as we would do with the men.
Thank you. Just one general question for any member of this distinguished panel to pick up on, and it has to do with creating spaces, as you mentioned, and not only on the basis of gender that gives you permission to sit on the table, but that there's a mechanism that allows everybody to be able to be the best they can. So the question now has to do with opportunity for women. First, from the supply side, creating the spaces for women, and secondly, from the demand side, for women to fully understand that these opportunities exist. From the demand side, it seems to me that women do not seem to understand or fully grasp the opportunities when they're confronted with it, for all kinds of reasons. And it's even compounded by the fact that the spaces for them to thrive are constricted. So on the supply side, what would it take for women to go boldly forth and demand, as opposed to perhaps waiting passively for the supply? Anybody is free to answer the question.
Is this on? Yeah, we discussed this a little bit earlier, and yeah, I come across that quite regularly. I do feel there are opportunities there, but it's encouraging our girls to have the courage to pick up on those opportunities and also not to be defeated easily. A lot of people ask me, how come you've achieved this? How come you've achieved that? Why is it so easy for you? I say it's never been easy, but I notice when there is an opportunity, it's an opportunity that I'm passionate about, I would just keep doggedly on pushing, and I will not be intimidated. And I think it's very difficult for our young girls, especially looking at our educational system and their experiences, to have the courage to just be very thick-skinned, stand up and demand that that opportunity is there for you. And demand it not just once, but twice, thrice. Just keep pushing and make that opportunity yours. You've got to seize that conversation and make it yours.
Okay. I think, can you hear me? Okay. I think we should bring it down a bit to, let's look at women in careers. Because I want to disagree with you slightly that women don't, on the demand side, we don't see the opportunities. If you look at financial services, there was a recent WEF report on gender gap that says that you have, in financial services, you have a better gender balance. You have 46% of people working in financial services globally is women. But when you look at the number of them that are in executive positions, it comes down to 15%. For me, what that tells you is that there's something that is making women fall through the cracks along the line in their careers. Yeah. So instead of making it just a demand conversation, which is that, oh, women don't see the opportunities, I think for organizations that are looking to really see women emerge, and I was talking to Kofo about it just now when we're talking about how women emerge, you cannot not give women equal opportunity to vie for positions in the lower rung of their careers, in middle management, and then expect suddenly by miracle that you will have a female MD. It's not possible. You need to look at the pipeline and say, how do we get women, how do we become more flexible? There's a very good Harvard Business Review podcast I listen to every morning these days. It's called Women at Work, and I encourage everyone to listen. It talks about some of the key issues around picking up, women, people taking credit for your work, how inflexible sometimes we can be in terms of parental leave and things like that. These are key issues that we need to address if we want to see more women emerge. You don't expect to ask a woman, it is not fair for you to ask her to choose between her job and her family, right? If she's talented, it's not fair. If she's talented and you think that she's going to add value to that organization, then you better well put in structures that will enable her go, serve this very important part of her life, and then come back and grow through the organization.
I've just been signaled by a clutch of very powerful women, but I think I'm just going to assert my masculinity, whatever is left of it. And, if you have 30 seconds, 1 minute to just wrap up on this thing, because I think it's an important topic that Aisha has underscored.
We need to also know to stay on the treadmill, because in a lot of instances, you see the significant amount of women at entry level. When we get to middle level, we start to fall through the cracks. And at that point, it could be we're having family, we're having young kids, and the organization is not as accommodating. So while we need to get the organization to recognize that there are certain policies you need to put in place to keep women in employment, on the other side, young women should also plan for that and know that within this period in my life is going to be challenging. What do I need to do? How do I get extended family to support me? Tiding over those critical years where you're having young kids, you need to go for antenatal, you're doing immunization, you're not able to be at work. So those 5 to 6 years are challenging years that we need to find ways to remain in employment. So when you pass that, then you will be able to stay in place. And when you're searching for example, a woman with 20 years experience in such sector, you'll be able to find them. So that period with which, we have all manners of commitment that are drawing us on different sides. And as Aisha said, we should not need to choose. No woman should be made to choose between her family and a career. We need to find ways to balance. And where you are a woman in position of authority, you should make policies that seek to support women. You should lean out yourself to sort of recognize that, she needs not to be at work, she's coming in late, and to accommodate that. Just to give an example, in Nigerian ports, they had condition of service that did not make provision for women extended maternity leave. I put that. They had positions where they said, you need to be married before you can have a maternity leave. And I found that ridiculous. Bearing a child has nothing to do with your marital status. Delivery, rearing a child is not about marriage. So there are all these, policy positions that if you find yourself in a position of authority, you need to institute them to accommodate and allow for women to be able to, rise up and be in that. More so for women in the north. I'm from the northern part of the country. It's more challenging to have women in employment. A lot of our family members and our spouses feel we should not be in employment. We should be at home. So that is more difficult in the north. So recognizing that being in employment is beyond remuneration. This is what I also always say. Because you're told that, your husband looks after you, you have no reason to be in employment, you don't need the salary. But it's beyond remuneration. Remuneration is key, but your self-actualization, who I am, my sense of purpose, what do I seek to achieve as a person, is in itself a very critical thing, as we seek to define ourselves. So know that there would be challenging times where work would be tough. I have very young kids. My kids are 6 and 8, and it's always a battle running between going to parent-teacher meeting, coming back, having to go for all sorts of immunization. It's a challenge that I know that I must do, and in so doing, I recognize and accommodate that. So please stay on the treadmill. It's tough at a particular time. That is the only way. That opportunity that has been put to you, you can lean over. As much as I want to help you, if I'm looking for someone with 15 years experience, 20 years experience in the maritime sector, if you don't have it, I can't help you. But I need you to stay in that area. As tough as it will be, just hang in there. There would be a time where you'll be called upon to sit around the board table. So please stay in, hang on. It's tough, but we'll all get there. Thank you.
30 seconds each. Just Karen, I'm sorry. I apologize. I told you I was going to throw myself at the mercy of the women. So there it is. Please go on.
Yeah, Paulie, Aisha, Hadiza have said so many things, but just to add to what they have said, it is true that at the very top leadership positions, we do not have too many women. But are there women that can take on those roles? Yes, there are. If you look at banking, how many women founders do we have? We have, probably 5% or how many women MDs, but how many women have actually founded banks? And so what I feel is that there are barriers and there are things that are holding women back not to achieve their full potential. And events like this, like WISCAR, should and will and are focusing on those barriers. Barriers like being limited with your vision, barriers like mastering your emotions, barriers like balancing family and work. How do you overcome those barriers? And a lot of these events need to take place to help women to actually achieve
that level, because they are able to do it and able to do it in a very, very. So I think that these sort of events would train a lot of talented women out there to take on those very high leadership roles.
Thank you. Ambassador, very last word, a round up, 30 seconds.
Yes, I mean, I think that the demand side in our experience in South Africa has been created, if you see what I mean, so that it was legislated that we need to practice affirmative action for women, and so all companies had to make sure that they employ more women, and government as well. So I'm saying sometimes we need these obstacles to be assisted by central policy, legislation. I'm not sure whether I would be sitting here today. And it was hard to get to that acceptance, in a sense, but it was related to our reality at the time. So I'm just saying that there are now more women, apparently, than men in universities, so there's definitely supply. But now, how are we going to make sure that they do get those jobs without being purposeful and deliberate about it in our institutions? And developing policies that actually target that by such and such a time we should have so many women sitting in board positions or in senior management positions, etc. So it really does need political will, because inequality is caused by politics, whether it's politics at state government level or politics in the boardrooms of a company, of a corporate.
Well, thank you so much. It's a wrap. So 2 questions? Oh, great. I thought my hide was at stake again. I've been getting all kinds of side glances. So we have the space for 2 questions. I think the mic is live on this side. So anybody that has short questions, limited to questions only, please, wend your way to the mic and ask your questions of the panelists. No questions? Oh, wow. Sorry?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Direct and pointed questions, please. No comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, panel. I'm really honored to be here to listen to all of you speak. My question is directed at Hadiza. I just noticed you made mention of women making plans for the future, if they want to stay in the workplace, and you talked about recruiting extended family and so on and so forth. I would just like to ask you why you did not mention recruiting, if I could use that word, the fathers as well. Because I believe they have a role in parenting.
Good day, everyone. My name is Ayo Ayeni. I just wanted to find out, Ms. Hadiza spoke about policies, how she was able to change policies. And my question also goes to the Deputy Director of the CBN. Sorry, I'm sure I misplaced that. How can we as women influence policy changes? Because that's part of what I work on in the workplaces at individual levels. Like you were talking about how people talk, the campaign for the Chibok girls. So how can we kind of harness the strength, make our voices heard, to put in place these policies at the workplace that would make work more favorable for women? Thank you.
I think it's the final question here. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, ladies. It's very impactful to be here and listen to your stories.
Sometimes we have this challenge. I think it was the, what's it called? That play we watched, where they talked about how we also, through some of our actions and our beliefs, we sort of put fuel to some of these the stereotypes. So if you see yourself through a gender lens, if you see your boss as a woman first, then you already have a problem because you are bracing yourself for the issues. Now, I've thought about this, and I think there's something we are missing. There is this dichotomy between the whole generation XY issue between older women and younger women. It's not really about being women. It's just about coming from different places and expectations. So there's a general conversation happening about millennials, whether they are positive or negative. It's really not about you being a woman. Even the male bosses complain sometimes about the millennials. Male bosses complain sometimes about the millennials. And I say you have to try and understand where they're coming from. Perhaps the older generation expect that the challenges they face will be the same you are facing, or they think that the sweat that we have put in, upon which you are experiencing this opportunity, you are not taking it seriously. They're trying to get you to do better. I see difficult bosses as, people call them difficult bosses, people I have to win over, people I have to get on my side, and I ignore all the other parts of it. People ask me that, oh, in finance, did you ever experience being a woman, how did it affect me? I didn't even notice. When it's time to talk, I will talk, and I'll say what I need to say. And even if somebody, and what tends to happen in some of those meetings, if you're the only woman in the room, you say something, people move on, a guy says it, they start harping on it. I say, oh, thank you for making my point. Like I was saying before, you have the conversation. For me, I think we should ignore that, and we as women should stop saying this thing. We say it all the time, and the men pick on it, and they say, oh, you women are your worst enemies. Even you people say it yourself. Let's move on to the real issues. Really, please. Yes, on the boys, I just thought I want to mention, there's a foundation called Boys to Men Foundation that looks purely at trying to build confident young men, intelligent, that have ambition, but are gender sensitive and understand their role in society. So increasingly, it's run by, the founder is Ifeoma Idigbe, one of the trustees at Wimbies. Increasingly, people are starting to see the gap that she talked about around finding eligible men that are good enough to be your partners, and they started working on all of those things. Someone asked about policy. How do you change policy? From the top and from in the middle as well. In my role, of course, if I'm at the Committee of Governors and we're having a meeting and we're talking about something that affects employees, I try to position it as our employees. It's not really about I'm sitting here and I'm taking the gender seats or gender nomination. It's about fairness for everybody that works at the central bank. And so when we are trying to make policies, and I think that one section of the population would be probably ignored or it would affect adversely, I speak up. But I also encourage the people that report into me down the line, the female directors. I say to them, if a woman is in a position, who is the next person that should take that position? Are there women in the pipeline available to be considered as well? And if they are not, it's your responsibility to get them through the pipeline. There's only so much you can do when you're at the top. Everybody, all the women down the chain, have to help each other to get up. That's what the men do.
Well, thank you so much. This has been extremely enlightening for all of us. Can we just have another warm round of applause for it's been absolutely fantastic. I think we can make our way out now.
We'd just like to invite our keynote speaker and our founder to come up and take a photograph with the panelists.
Oh, okay.
Yes, very quickly. Sorry?
This is my 15 seconds of fame, by the way, so.
Where is Ronke, my co-MC? Ronke, come up quickly. Okay, and Ifeoma is part of this one. She's not here. Ifeoma, are you in the room? Where is she? Okay, we'll catch her later. This is my co-MC, Ronke Jemirigbe, actually a WISCAR mentee and a process engineer at Chevron. I'm very passionate about women's events. Okay, please, we can invite, Madam, would you mind taking your seat over here, please? Thank you all so much to our panelists, to our super moderator. That was great. There's a networking session afterwards, so if you have more questions, because I know you must have more questions, please engage them and engage some. We have a lot of WISCAR mentors in the room who you can also engage in your questions. So I'd like to invite I want to let the schoolgirls know that before you leave, we have school bags for you, courtesy of Axiom Microfinance Bank. So make sure you collect those on your way out. Just to wrap a bow around the panel session, because there were some questions brought up about the role of supportive men. I can tell you that almost 100% of successful women are successful because they have supportive partners or husbands. So that is a critical success factor. Choose your partner well, otherwise it's highly unlikely for you to be successful and married. Okay, because the ones who didn't have a supportive partner and are successful are divorced. Okay, so it's a critical success factor. The other one about accommodating women in the workplace, research has shown that 60% of women return to work even after their second child. So it's not having children that makes them leave work. The 40% who left work because of workplace problems. Those kind of problems that Ifeoma's presentation showcased. So we really need to tackle those problems. So let me hand over to Mrs. Muni Shonibare, Advisory Board Member.
Good afternoon, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I stand on existing protocol. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I have to say that this is it's a very surreal moment for me personally, for the very simple reason that I imagine that we all have bucket lists, things we want to do, experience exactly what it is she goes through, she goes through and how she manages to arrive at conclusions in the face of very challenging times. So it's on that note that with very great and absolute pleasure, she needs no introduction, that we welcome President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the very first democratically elected female president in Africa, as the keynote speaker for the 2018 WISCAR Annual Conference. President Johnson Sirleaf is a leading global promoter of women's empowerment, which led her to being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011 for her non-violent struggle for the safety of women and for the furtherance of women's right in full participation in peace-building work. She has symbolically set a precedent for women in Liberia and indeed of Africa in a way very, very few have done before her. President Johnson Sirleaf's principled and focused pursuit of meaningful political participation in the civic life of Liberia ultimately resulted in her achievement in January 2006 of the highest office of president, markets, and fund scholarships for capacity building. She successfully negotiated $4.6 billion in external debt forgiveness and the lifting of UN trade sanctions, which allowed Liberia to once again access international markets. She increased the national budget from $80 million in 2006 to over $672 million in 2012, with an annual GDP growth rate of more than 7%. She's a leading promoter of freedom, peace, justice, women's empowerment, and democratic institutions. She's the recipient of the United States Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award, for her personal courage and unwavering commitment to expanding freedom and improving the lives of Africans. More recently, she was awarded Africa's most prestigious leadership prize, the Mo Ibrahim Prize, in recognition of her leadership in office following exemplary service of 2 terms from 2006 to 2017. It's worthy of note that Liberia was the only country out of 54 countries to improve in every category and subcategory of the Ibrahim Index of African Governance. She's a recipient of many other honors and awards, which include the French Grand Croix of the Légion d'Honneur, which is the Grand Cross, France's highest public distinction. She has been awarded honorary degrees by more than 15 institutions around the world, including both Harvard and Yale University. Fondly referred to as the Iron Lady, Madam President, I think I shall add warrior princess to that. President Ellen Johnson is the proud mother of 4 boys, 11 grandchildren. She's a strong and resilient woman, and we are really honored and privileged to have such a distinguished woman in our midst today. It gives me immeasurable pleasure to invite Her Excellency, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, to the stage to deliver the keynote speech. Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you. Please sit down. Thank you so much for that very, very gracious introduction. Honorable Minister, Dr. Ini Lima, thank you for being here. It's not often that we find the men ministers that come and sit so patiently through a program. I recommend him to make sure that he joins as an honorary member of WISCAR. Honorable Commissioner, representative of the Governor of Lagos State, I think our chief has left, and let me also recognize the representative of His Royal Highness, the Oba of Lagos, Chief Senunu. Thank you for being here. Our own Chief Oprah Benson, and our founder, Ms. Aminata Oyapola, our ambassador from Liberia. Let me say what a great pleasure it is to be here. I'm honored to be a part of this program with the formidable women in successful careers. Since its founding in 2008, WISCAR has worked to build a strong and well-resourced bench for the next generation of professional women leaders in Nigeria. We saw it in display in this program today. The display of Nigeria Theater and how that pleased us all to listen, to watch, to see the expertise that was demonstrated, our panelists telling their own stories in such a manner that it inspired economic and social development and contributions to strengthening the position of women in Africa and across the globe. Liberia's road to peace was carried on the backs of women. Women, young girls, those who served as slaves, work slaves, those young ones who were taken into the bush and subjected to what they suffered. This is why in 2005, recognizing 150 years of dictatorship, of failure, of militarism, of a country subject to all that it went through, coup d'etats, wars. The Liberian women had one resounding message to the world: our time has come. Our key judges are not only required in our own commitment to the United Nations program, but also in our own elections commission, not laws, but election commission policies, to be able to do that. We did not achieve that. However, the message that was sent about the participation of women, the message that was sent to enable women to be able to participate and to take a stand, had really gone deeply into the society, so that by the time we reached the 217 elections, more than 160 women had sought seats in our legislature, unprecedented in our history. Moreover, 2 ran for president. 1 for vice president, and today she is the vice president. She won. And so I'm pleased that we are proud of our women, our market women, our rural women, and we can say that today the stereotype has been broken. They have a voice that can never be taken away from them. Even our young girls today have a voice. And let me tell you a story. In one of the most rural of our communities, where members of our UN agencies go out to promote women, and they went, and as they came into the schoolyard, they found a little girl and a little boy fighting for reasons they did not know. But the teacher, recognizing that visitors were coming into the yard, rushed in and said to the little girl, "Don't you know that girls do not fight with boys? Girls are supposed to be quiet, conservative, humane, and don't do that." And the little girl stopped for a little while, not in Africa, in the world. And so we know that women have come a long, long way. African women have produced women trailblazers in all walks of life. I go back to my own country. Angie Brooks. Angie Brooks was Africa's first woman president of the General Assembly. That's way back in the 70s. And those great women of ours who led the way, if we wanted to, we can even go back into history and talk about Chief Swakoko, a woman chief, unprecedented in those days, way back in the 1920s when Liberia was just building, and the fact that she stood up to allow development to go through, to allow the road to be built that started the process of development. I want to look at so many women in Nigeria, right here in this room. Those not here. For example, your own Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, one that we love so much and we honor so much for the strength of her character, for the competence of her professionalism, and for the world standing that she enjoys. Amina Mohammed, now Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. We applaud the work. I had the occasion to work with her when we were formulating the Sustainable Development Goals, and she headed the secretariat that did that. I was one of the 3 co-chairs for the formulation of that program, and I know what she brings to the post that she now has, and how you will see a lot of changes in the United Nations system because of her talent and what she will bring. We have, as we go back into history, we can all remember Wangari Maathai of Kenya and how she blazed a path on environment. Today, environment is of a great topical issue, but in those days when no one paid attention, she was planting trees in Kenya, all over the world, pointing to the fact that we needed to preserve our planet. We needed to make sure that we left it safe for generations unborn. Dr. Joyce Banda, who succeeded for a short while as president of Malawi, and now trying again, we want to honor her courage, that she's able again to take on what it takes to compete and to attempt to compete effectively in sometimes what is, or most times what is, a male-dominated society. One again, Catherine Samba-Panza of the Central African Republic, who also served as a president for a period of time. And again, introduced in her society the right of a woman to participate, the right of a woman to compete, the right of a woman to hold leadership position and to provide the basis for encouraging and motivating other women. And if we think about courage, we cannot forget Winnie Madikizela Mandela of South Africa, and how she brought to her country, standing by in such a way, advocating, fighting, to the place where our own icon, Nelson Mandela, was finally freed from prison and assumed the presidency. And today, as we go, the world honors him for his courage and for what he achieved as the leader of his country. Yet, lasting transformation cannot be achieved by leaders alone. It requires attitudinal change, commitments of civil society, the media, religious institutions, and business entities. Looking beyond statistics and individual women, you will see that true governing powers still remain largely close to women. As Huda Shawari, founder of Egypt's first philanthropic society for women, and the Egyptian Women Feminist Union has stated, men have singled out women of outstanding and merit and put them on a pedestal to avoid recognizing the capabilities of all women. They are the ones that provide the wind. For every woman leader that stands out, there are 1,000 women who stand behind them and put the wind on their backs to enable them to achieve the flight. And so in understanding this, we also must recognize the obstacles to political participation of women And beyond patriarchal constructs, we must recognize that these obstacles, institutional, societal, cultural, come from a legacy of winner-takes-all politics, from states where power is highly concentrated, and from weak institutions where accountability to the people is still aspirational. Our goal as women, our goal as men, in recognizing that we are all equal, not only equal under God, but equal in capacity, equal in ambition, equal in aspiration. So our goal is to continue to break these barriers, to build upon current progress, to promote a spread of all that is equal opportunity and equity throughout the society. For when we do that, our economy is made stronger. Our nation is made more progressive. Our globe is made more humane, and our people are more inspired to work toward the betterment of mankind throughout the globe. Dear friends, tonight I will be pleased to share distinction with 6 other bulwarks in Nigeria, including my dear colleague, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili. Over the years, we just like to call her Obi. Yeah, and when we say that, that connection to her is there. That connection with women is there. You're former Minister of Education and former Vice President of the World Bank. Obi was known for leading the Bring Back Our Girls campaign to help free the 276 girls kidnapped from Chibok in 2014. She stands today as the leading female presidential candidate for the February 2019 election. Her candidacy may be tough. Mine was when I tried it in 1997. But it marks a defiant and much needed challenge to the patriarchal political party structure in Nigeria and across much of the continent. Since independence from British rule in 1960, none of Nigeria's 36 states have elected a female governor. Moreover, only a handful of women have successfully held office, elected office in the 19 years that Nigeria has returned to democratic rule. In 2003, 3% of those elected to office were women. In 2007, 7%. In 2015, much like other countries in Africa, where one could see that the barriers were getting stronger, the fences were going up. It had gone down in Nigeria from 7% to 5.6%. Today, of the 190 legislators in the Senate, only 7 are female, even though women account for 49% of the entire population. I know this is political, but I am a politician. And over the years, we've learned to tell it like it is. We'd like to have the courage of our conviction. We'd like to exhibit the passion of our causes. And so the next election here is right around the corner. If we aspire toward transformational change, we need to move beyond counting the few achievements of women at the highest level. We must seek to build a strong and well-resourced branch of female political leaders across a wide cross-section of society. And we cannot do this alone. Despite our successes, despite the global wave that seems to be moving across, we must also consider others, all the disfranchised from the political process. We must reach out to them, take them along, build a coalition that enables them to be a part of the process in which they too not only can own and feel the ownership of what's happening in their country, but they can be assured that the future belongs to them too. I'm especially encouraged by the political energy of youth in Nigeria and their not too young to run campaign. And looking ahead, we need them. The youth, today's youth, all over the world represent the dominant factor of society, with 60% of youth globally being 25 years and under. The future belongs to them. And we need to have a shared vision, a fundamental change to ensure that all of them, that the entire civil society will join hands in ensuring this transformation that Africa seeks, that Africa has worked so hard to achieve. It's our duty, each and every one of us, women and men, to ensure that our world is a better place, more humane, more aspirational, more motivational, in order that tomorrow we can stand and say, we made a difference. We have touched a life here, a life there, and enabled them to feel that they too are part of the society and can achieve the goals that they too, like our founder here, Amina, can dream big, but go beyond the dreaming and achieve those dreams. Thank you, Amina, for what you've brought to this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. For the 5 generations of women in this room, I'm sure we've all had a mentoring session right here. Can we give another round of applause to the President? We now invite, okay, we'll just have a quick photo moment with a couple of our special guests. Thank you very much, Madam President. So now we're going to have a conversation with the President and our founder. Please write your questions down and pass them to the ushers who will be within the aisles. We'll collect them, and if you stay long enough, you just might hear your question posed to the President directly. So please write your questions down and then pass them to any of the ushers in the aisles. Thank you.
If you enjoyed that talk, please give Madame another resounding. Thank you very much, Madam President, for that very inspiring keynote speech and all the nuggets that were in there. But I'm sure the members of the audience have lots of questions that they would like to ask you. And they just we would like to just use this opportunity that we have with you here to dig a little deeper. So I'm going to kick some of the questions whilst, the questions from our participants are being collated. The title of your book, Madam President, This Child Will Be Great, comes from a prophecy by a wise old man in your home in Monrovia when you were just a few years old. Can you tell us a little bit about that and also share with us the role that your mother, Martha Cecilia Johnson, played in your life?
Well, as the story goes, I was a young baby on the bed in the room, my parents' room. And an old man came, as they usually do when a new child is born. They come in to see the baby and, to say congratulations to parents. And this old man came in and just looked on the bed and said, oh, Martha, this child would be great. Well, greatness took a long time to come, let me tell you. But, and so there were times when I struggled with, a technical mind of knowing there's no such thing as a prediction of the future. But yet this prediction was hanging over us. But as I said, it took a long time. There were times when, we all laughed about it and said, crazy old man didn't know what he was talking about. But, as things go, thank God, we were able to rise up to the expectations.
His prediction came true. And what I took away from that is, the power of positivity, prophesying positive things, from people and also by yourself. Also, Madam President, your father, Jamale Carney Johnson, was the first Liberian from an indigenous ethnic group to be elected to the country's national legislature. What was the influence of his own career on your life? Did that influence you in any way?
Well, it had to, because, we did see him, although we were young, and he got sick, paralyzed while I was still young. I was sick for 7 years. So, but during that period of his ascendance, yes, he provided an inspiration, and also he never forgot his roots. So that my siblings and I went into the countryside every vacation to ensure that we remembered from whence we came, and that, success, it can be a double-edged sword. And so we quickly were able at any time when he got sick to be able to adjust to a different way of life. But I think the fact that he remembered where his root was and enabled us to always remember that, enable us to meet different times and different kinds of conditions in life and to be able to just adjust accordingly.
I find your story particularly extraordinary. And many people, I don't think, know this, but you got married at the very tender age of 17. And by the time you were 22 years old, you had already had 4 boys. You also, suffered. You also suffered some abuse and violence in your marriage. So, how did you cope with a young family, and and then to also rise up from there to pursue a professional career and become the global icon that you are today?
Well, I was a wife, I was a mother. I performed I carried out those responsibilities, but I didn't lose hope. And I didn't lose the aspiration to be able to catch up with my peers who had left me behind by going to college right after high school. And so it took a while for me to do that, but fortunately too, in our system, and I think that system may apply here also, the extended family system. so that the time to go to school, my husband and I to go back to school, our mothers enabled them with two of our sons being taken by his mother and two taken by my mother to enable us to go back to school. So that was a big support system that did that. But like I said, the determination to catch up. My very good friend and I graduated from high school. I think Opal over there will know what I'm talking about. Chief Benson, who's her very good friend also, and she and I have until now have remained good friends. We were in high school together, and so I could always see her ahead of me as a symbol. I had to catch up. When you talk about role model, yes. So that's it.
Fantastic. So what would you say is the impact of education in your life? I think that's a really important thing I'd like you to talk about, especially since we have many young girls in the house. And how did you make the most of the opportunities that you were presented with?
Well, education is the foundation, for everything that we're able to achieve. So that has to be priority number one for everyone, for every society, for every country. And, like I say, because you have to want to dig deep, so to speak. Yeah, you have to want to, I think one of the panelists said, what I sought to do was to be the best. I sought for excellence, in other words. And so I think that the education gives you that desire for excellence, and you use that desire and you work well for excellence, and you find that it moves you forward toward the achievement of your goals.
Why are you sometimes described as the Iron Lady? How did that come about?
My career was started in finance, and so it's really based on financial conservatism. In the way I started my career at the low levels, and then our Ministry of Finance, and moved up, and was always very conscious about accountability, financial accountability, and sometimes it's very tough in decisions affecting people and those who try to break the rules and whatnot. And so that's how come they adopted that. They looked at Margaret Thatcher as an example, for example, and say, she's just like Margaret Thatcher, very tough. And so that's how the Iron Lady came about.
Okay. You already told us in the course of your talk that you, of course, experienced several challenges in your 12 years in office as president. But I'd like you to share with us the difference, if any, that it made that you were a female president.
Let us first be very clear. A female president is a president, period.
Thank you for that, yeah.
With all the attributes that goes with being president, all the respect, responsibilities, whatnot, they are also determined. Now, is there a difference? Yes. The difference is females, and females everywhere, female presidents included, have a sensitivity to humankind. That's why females do not make wars, because of their concern for lives, because they're mothers, their concern for dignity, and their concern for ensuring that a human being is respected and preserved. So that's a little bit of difference, but that does not take away everything else that president as a woman represents.
Thank you. I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you very much. Madam President, you you alluded in your talk to the fact that, it took 150 years for a female president to finally be elected in Liberia. What lessons can we all learn from that whole journey? And what do you think women need to do differently for us to increase our numbers in governance and politics today?
Women have to participate. You have to be a part of how society is moving, and it's happening. It's happening around the world. I mean, the stereotypes of wife, mother, teacher, nurse, that stereotype is broken today. And so women are just as aspirational to anything that everyone else in society has. And I don't think it has taken time, because it took time for those barriers to be broken. But the catching up is coming, and coming fast. And I think it's not only in the values of women, but also in the values of men. This is why we've pointed out examples of where men are now taking the lead in ensuring that women take their rightful place in society, that they begin to have the equality and the equity that they've long deserved. But women must also be willing, because if we're talking politics, it can be a rough game. And sometimes women don't like the dirtiness of politics. But I think anyone who enters, like professional women have already gone through what it takes to succeed. They've succeeded in business. You've got so many in civil society that have succeeded as non-governmental organization leaders. And so those leaders can transform into political leadership for those who wish it. And if you wish it, don't stop. Go for it. If you don't like it, great, stay out of it. But if you want it, go for it.
Thank you. And that leads me to my next question, which is, as a woman who has made the journey to the top of your country's political hierarchy, what advice would you give Nigerian women aspiring to go into party politics, governance, and political leadership? And in particular, how did you overcome the barriers that women face, when they decide to go into politics, particularly fundraising and campaigning? Going into politics is serious business, and I'm not sure that we realize that we have to take it, very, very seriously and actually come up with a strategic plan. I did read in your book, a little bit about your political campaign strategy, and, my eyes lit up because I couldn't believe, the depths and the details you went to. Can you share that story with us, please?
Well, every society is different, and we have to tailor the strategy for the specificity of the country. In our case, like I say, because we had all these years and our country had not achieved the level of development consistent with the endowment of the country. So it was easy, and we had these many strong women in our history that were able also to set the example, to be the role models. We'd had many firsts. One of our churches was a woman, very strong. The head of our university was a woman, very strong, and they really led the way that enabled us. So now, Nigeria society, you'll have to look at these different conditions here, and your strategy has to be fit for the conditions here. So your strategy may not be the strategy we used, but I would just suggest that based upon your conditions and based upon something that you must work on that strategy. Don't just accept condition the way it is, but knowing the condition, tailor the strategy to the condition to enable you to achieve your political goals.
So running for president for Liberia, sometimes when we want to go into things, that we think are dangerous or, complex, our family members, don't support us. When you were running for president for Liberia, it was a decision that your family did not initially support. So what advice can you give women whose dreams are so big that it in some way conflicts with the expectations and good wishes of those dear to them?
I think once a decision has been made to pursue a certain position, one just has to sit with family members. And first of all, you've got to say that you intend to do it. And this is a decision that you have to make yourself. Encourage the support from family. Some may be reluctant to give it, but I think when they see the determination is yours, and you're willing to do the work for it, you're willing to take the sacrifices for it, you're even willing to fail. Because failure is success upside down. And so,
please, can you say that again so that everybody hears that again? Failure is
success upside down. Because I always say that because you are going to along your long path. If your goals are high and your dreams are big, there's nothing that says you're going to be linear in the achievement. There's bound to be ups and downs, and if you have the courage to fail, that failure gives you strength. It renews your courage. It strengthens your resolve.
WISCAR, as you know, is a leadership and mentorship network. So who are your role models, and how important do you think role modeling and mentoring is for young women?
Well, I mentioned most of them in my statement. Okay. There may be others, but I mentioned it. And then, there's some women down. I'm going to point to one lady in this audience, because a role model is supposed to be somebody over you, right? But she's a young person to me. But stand up, Lucia. I just brought her with me. This is a young lady who was a university student in Liberia, who was one of the activists in what was called the Progressive Group, who went to Liberia's dreadful prison, where there's no road in that prison. Nobody who goes there comes out of there. She and some of her colleagues from the university, she went to that prison, and she also went to prison with me after that.
Wow.
And so, for me, that's a role model.
We're going to address all of those questions using technology. One last question for you, Madam President. How would you like to be remembered? You've made a mark in African politics. Your footprints are there in the sands of time. How would you like to be remembered, and what is your charge to the next generation?
I hope I'll be remembered for breaking the barriers to women top leadership in Africa. I hope I'll be remembered for giving Liberians a change from despair to hope. With those, I think that I can say is my true legacy. our sustainable peace that comes from that.
Thank you, Madam President. Please give her a round of applause.
So thank you. We've taken a lot of questions actually from our mentees, from students and members of the public. What we'll do is we'll entreat Madam President to, we'll send the questions to her, and if she doesn't mind responding to them, and then we'll post both the questions and her answers on all our social media handles. WISCAR is on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So, and of course our website. So if that's all right with you, ma'am, because we have so many questions for you.
In private resources to rebuild schools, clinics, markets, and fund scholarships for capacity building.
Former Distinguished WISCAR awardee, please join us. And Ayobe, I saw you earlier. I don't know whether you are still here. Another Distinguished WISCAR Award recipient, please join us.
I'd just like to share with all of us here what the inscription on the Distinguished WISCAR Award plaque. And it reads, "Defined by no man, madam, you are your own story, blazing through the world, turning history into her story. And when they dare to tell you about all the things you cannot be, you smile and you tell them, I am both war and woman, and you cannot stop me." And those are the words of Nikita Gill. So it gives me great pleasure on behalf of the WISCAR Advisory Board members and the patrons of WISCAR to present this Distinguished WISCAR Award to Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for being here with us today, and thank you for your keynote speech. I don't know if you want to say anything more.
No, it's okay. That's fine.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Mrs. B? Where's Mrs. Balogun? Thank you.
Please, you stay. I hope we have pledges. I hope we received enough bids for the business class return ticket, because we'll be announcing the winner soon. WISCAR. Oh, the route is from West Africa to any European destination. A business class return ticket from West Africa to any European destination. Now, WISCAR has entered a partnership with McKinsey, the global management consulting firm. McKinsey has a program that identifies young women making an impact in their communities, and WISCAR links them up with our mentors to help them in their journey. So we'd have a representative from McKinsey here who wants to share the impact report that you will find very useful, and you'll be able to get a link to that report on the WISCAR website. All right, so charity auction. Rabi, are you ready? Or not yet? Shall I give you a bit more time for the tickets? We're still collecting some bids. Okay. So I'd like to invite Mrs. Funke Amobi, who is an advisory board member and the group head of HR for Stanbic IBTC, to come forward and lead us in our graduation of our Stream 9, our outgoing Stream 9 WISCAR mentees. So Mrs. Funke Amobi, please. Chairperson of the WISCAR Governance and Programs Committee.
I definitely say that the Ebele that came into WISCAR in January is totally different from the Ebele living now. I'm more confident, I have more career knowledge, more knowledge about family, how to integrate my career. And do different by herself and complete a task by herself. I think the WISCAR program has helped her
to step up to the plate.
The WISCAR platform gave me an opportunity to stand up for myself, to excel, to move up in that, and also an opportunity for me to remember that I need to pass the ladder down and support the younger generation.
WISCAR stands for Women in Successful Careers, and it's essentially an empowerment program. We focus on strategic mentorship. We focus on capacity building for women, and the idea really behind WISCAR is to ensure that we build the capacity and the capability of young professional career women who've chosen to pursue a career.
We define a career to essentially be, where you have decided to pitch your professional tent for the long haul, and so this is not an easy journey. And so having a support network like as WISCAR provides is essential really in the load off a little bit by telling you and sharing their own experiences with you.
Since WISCAR is a non-profit organization, we depend on the kind donations of the public, kind individuals like you and the corporate organizations to help us keep it running. So please support WISCAR.
WISCAR is a non-for-profit organization. That means that it depends on the goodwill of young Nigerians like you to support the dreams of young women as they aspire to make a difference in their careers. And that's why we are calling on you today to please try to make your own contribution to support the dreams of these women as we look up to you to achieve this.
We're indeed very grateful and most appreciative of the corporate institutions and donors that have supported us over the years and have helped us to sustain our operations until now. And I'll mention the big ones: MTN, Access Bank, UBA, and this year we have FCMB, we have Shell, we have First Bank. So many of these corporate organizations who have come behind. We have the Bank of Industry, and we also have the MPA, and even the Central Bank, are supporting us this year.
I am Ebele Iwugo Opako, and I'm a WISCAR mentee.
My name is Halima Turaji, and I'm a WISCAR mentee.
Madam President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please do allow me to stand on existing protocol. It gives us great pleasure today to present the graduating set of Stream 9. There's a class of 23. Please clap for them as they file out. They've been through structured mentoring and some excellent
Anonymous. So if you win, that means you still remain anonymous. You want that? And if you're anonymous, that means you don't get the ticket. So if you participated in the bid, can you raise your hands for me? Let me see you. A round of applause for them, please. Okay, we're going to do something very interesting now, right? We have the highest bid here, but I understand some people were not able to put in their bids. So I'm going to throw it open again for the last time. Do you agree with me? I will tell you what this bid is. Yeah? Are we on board with this? I can't hear you. So I'm going to tell you what this is, and anyone that can top this, yeah, gets the ticket. Is that fair? Okay, so those who feel it's fair, say aye. Those who feel it's not fair, say nay. Okay. It's for fundraising, guys. I need your support on this. I understand that. Yes, and actually the ticket value is 1.3, but we've got something very interesting here. But I do feel we have a lot of people sitting here that can top this. So will everybody say aye with me? Aye. Okay, round of applause for yourselves. So I'm going to tell you the amount I have here quickly, and we're going to do fastest fingers. So the first hand that goes up to top this bid gets the ticket. Are we fine? Okay. So we've got, not 700. We've got 800,000 naira here. So anyone that wants to top it, fastest fingers. Is Boma here? Oh, we got somebody here. Round of applause. How much? 1 million. So, please, a round of applause for her. Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to call on the Air France team to present this ticket. And a round of applause to our winner, Boma. Aren't you guys excited for her? And our fundraising as well. A round of applause for Boma. Congratulations. So can we call on the Air France team, please? She did. 1 minute. No, but it's fair. Thank you very much. Are you alone? Yes, with her.
Languages without intermediaries. So, Boma, I need to invite you back on stage along with Fabia, because we've come to the close of today's proceedings. So, Boma and Fabia, please come back up on stage.